and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
There's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And tonight we have Cheryl Costa coming up. We're going to be talking about early UFOs, which is always kind of interesting to me, being kind of a history, I don't want to say buff, but kind of a history fan. And so I'm looking forward to that. For that, we have Alejandro Rojas coming up with the news. But I wanted to announce we have a winner for the T-shirt graphic contest. We had 4 different people enter 5 different graphics. And if you look on our page, number 2 from Diane Cash is the hands-down winner. Beautiful graphic. And she's the same one that made the banner for our website, podcastufo.com. I want to thank everyone for supporting the show, and you can do that just by going on our website, and all that information's right there. And we have some exciting guests coming up. Just a little heads up, we have Jan Harzen coming up December 2nd. He is the executive director of MUFON. We also have someone I've been trying to get on the show for a long time. I had some help, and that's James Fox. Finally, I've actually tried to get him on almost since day one. He's going to be on the show on December 16th. And next week, I have Michael Lauk, who I used to do the news with. We always have a lot of fun. He's my guest for the entire show. But not, of course, Alejandro will be here. Right, Alejandro?
Right.
That's good. I'm glad. How are you, Alejandro?
I'm good. So is this like, do I get to start talking?
I think
my part
so.
of the show? Okay,
yeah, this
good.
is part of the show, yeah.
That was an awkward segue.
It really was. Yeah. I do awkward pretty well. You know that.
I got to hang out with James Fox just a couple of weeks ago because he came to the Travis Walton event, and I gave him a ride, a couple hours from there to the airport. I've known him for a while, and he is so fun. And he's got so many interesting stories.
Yeah, I'm really
he's
excited.
Great.
Really excited to have him on. And I had some help and someone that just wouldn't let go, and he finally said yes.
Cool.
So, yeah, looking forward to that.
So the lady who won for the art contest is the same one. Oh, that's Big Ben. Do you hear Big Ben?
I do. Are you in London?
No, actually, it's a doorbell, which never works, and it works, of course, only when we're recording here. But she's the one who did the banner for your website?
Yes.
Because that is so cool. Is that a particular sighting that it is depicting where there's like this V-shaped, UFO there?
No, I just told her. I just told her kind of an idea of what I liked, and she surprised me, and I said something, early evening twilight something, and she just sent me that graphic along with another one. The other one I have on our Facebook page, but this was that banner for the website I thought was pretty awesome.
It's very awesome. Super
well,
cool.
You.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, she's very talented, I'll say.
Yeah, very.
So we got some news, do we?
We do got some news. So here's a couple pieces of news. The first one is a sighting in El Salvador. It's a sphere-shaped UFO that this guy took pictures of and videotaped on October 29th, 2014. It was 5:37 p.m. When he saw this object and started taking some pictures and video. The reason why it's posted now is because now it's been investigated, and the Director of Investigations for MUFON, Chuck Reaver, closed the case as an unknown. Now, the pictures in the video I guess they're all of the same sighting, and the object looks very spherical.
You don't hear that too often, other than the orbs. That video is right up on our website. I did embed that as well. And the show note links, by the way, you can click on them and they'll go to the full stories over at openminds.tv. So what else is happening?
What else is Minnesota? This is a cool sighting. This one happened. There was no date, I don't think, on this one, but I'm pretty sure that this was this year. But this is a guy who stopped at a Dairy Queen, and they looked out of their window on the way home, and they saw this bright light, and they didn't know what it was. It got closer, and they noticed it had these big windows. At first, they thought it was a jet, but then they thought, well, the windows are too big. And they were able to see people inside, and this thing was huge, and they noticed it was not like a jet. It was some kind of UFO with these creatures or something inside. They don't describe what these beings look like inside, but they could see people in there. The way they draw them, they look sort of humanoid with a head and a torso type of thing. But and then the object quickly took off in another direction.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I wonder if anyone has investigated that and gone into detail with what the creatures, whatever they were, look like.
Yeah, maybe we'll hear more about this one. This one was recently posted or reported to MUFON, although it's still under investigation. So Roger Marsh, the director of communications from MUFON, wrote this story, and he says that this one's still under investigation.
Yeah, these sightings, now that's weird that it had big, rectangular windows. I mean, that's just, that's almost like an observation deck, and, which, does make me think, what is it? They're traveling back in time to look at some event that didn't happen, or if it is extraterrestrial. I never like to say it is, but if it is, did it come out of a mothership and then they're just floating around observing? Well,
that Betty and Barney Hill case, they said they saw this object with windows and they saw the people inside. And there's been a few other cases. There's a Turkey video,
right?
And although that might be. There's some research, unfortunately, that, well, for better or worse, seems to maybe explain the Turkey video, that it's actually a reflection of the lens, the curvature inside the lens, and they've been able to demonstrate similar effects that have happened before with this sort of thing. So I'm still trying to do more work into that, but actually Frank Warren of UFO Chronicles has some stuff posted on that. But some people feel that there's a window there with some creatures that you could see, and some people even feel that they're over a body. And in fact, and he's completely serious, my boss feels that that these things are eating, so they're kind of enjoying sucking the juices out of a human while they're looking out and the Turkish shoreline, enjoying the beautiful view or something. So,
well, if that was some type of reflection, now I've looked at a lot of images, stills from those videos, and
me too.
Roger Lear actually did some filming too, but it really they look just like heads. It would be to be a reflection. There's two heads, and then there's one time where there's one single.
Well, I don't know. I don't think they look like heads to me. I mean, they're round objects. They're a round kind of, but you got to remember these things. If you took the originals and you zoom in, there has been some like fiddling with the pictures to try to determine what they are, but that doesn't necessarily accurately display what they are. I mean, these methods that are used for that sort of thing. And, there could be inside of this crevice any kind of. And what's unfortunate is that the lenses I keep saying unfortunate because it is such a good case, and I'm afraid that maybe they figured it out, is that inside of the lenses, in the rings that hold like the lenses and stuff, there are notches. And this notch looks like one of those.
Oh.
So
now, did they actually see a light, though, that they focused on?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the whole point, is that it's a single point of light, a star or a planet, that when they zoom in on it with this lens, there's a reflection inside of the lens that causes this anomaly.
But wasn't there multiple filming and different cameras?
Just one camera.
Just one camera, even though it was several times?
Correct. All one camera. And that's why people at first thought, maybe it was a star or something, but that didn't pan out because it didn't look like one. But maybe it is a reflection of that star because it was the same time every day. And it was up in the air. That's what blows away the theory that this was the top of a cruise liner or something. Yeah. It doesn't fit the shapes of a cruise liner or anything like that. So that theory, even though some people really subscribe to that one, doesn't really fit. I don't think. But it's and no theory had fit up until fairly recently when Frank Warren had sent me some information about how it looks like, very similar to these pictures of an inside the lens reflection of the inside workings of the lens itself.
Well, I'd like to keep up on that. I'd like to find out if more is going back to humanoid type noted in crafts. There was some case other than, there was the Father Gill case where they were standing on top of the craft. There was another case that someone was describing one time where they were in a car and this craft came over and they could see the beings and the guy waved and they waved back, which is
really
another thing like, the Father Gill case.
Yeah, I don't think I remember that case, or I don't know that I'm aware of that one.
Yeah, I'd like to look that one up and something I read, it's just those type of cases are really fascinating to me because it really gets you wondering if it's, if there's actually some type of being in there.
Well, one of the best humanoid cases, and here's, I told you I was going to give you a couple an announcement.
Yeah.
And I actually have a couple things, and you said you didn't want to know what it was, but it has to do with this boil that I've got I wanted to ask you about. That's why I wanted to ask you off air, but since you wanted me to save it. No, I'm kidding. Actually, no, one of the announcements is that one of the best humanoid cases is the Ruwa case.
Right.
The aerial school where these kids, we're going to have one of the witnesses.
Oh, wow.
At the UFO Congress. I'm so excited about it. I've met her. She's come into the office. She's really shy. She actually did get on the air for a couple minutes when I was doing an interview with her friend who came with her, Luigi Venditelli, who's a UFO researcher in Canada. So, but they're going to come, and she's going to come and talk, and what's great is she has this artwork that she's been doing that is inspired by the experience that she feels is even influenced by her experience. So it's going to be super interesting. But here's the other big announcement. This is a really big one that I'm announcing in the works to working out the announcement. And it's going to be announced the first time right here on your show. That is that we're going to have another one of the first researchers or one of the greatest credible researchers of humanoid cases from way back when.
Really?
Yeah. Who do you think that might be?
Oh, my gosh. You're putting me on the spot. I'm going to say I don't want to guess wrong, so go ahead and tell me.
Oh, that's a cop-out.
It is.
Jacques Vallée.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, I think it's the first time he's ever really done a UFO conference. He's definitely hasn't done anything like this for decades. He is friends with Lee Spiegel, and they met back in the 70s when Lee Spiegel organized this UN event for Sir Eric Gary of, I can't remember the country right. Oh, Grenada. And
Oh, yes.
Sir Eric Gary was into UFOs, and he was pushing to get the UN to investigate UFOs. And so Lee Spiegel organized his presentation to the UN for him.
Right.
Lee Spiegel, who now works for the Huffington Post. And so he brought all of these credible people, Jacques Vallée being one of them. And so they've talked over the years. And I've gotten one interview with Jacques Vallée over his great book, Wonders in the Sky.
Wow.
And
he's really hard to nail down and get a hold of.
Exactly.
I've been trying to get a hold of him for 2 years.
Yeah, and I've asked him several times now that I've had the contact if he would speak at the Congress. He says, no, I just don't do that sort of thing. And he's told me this for years. Even when I was with MUFON, we tried, and he just says, no, I don't do UFO conferences. Well, Lee Spiegel, just for the hell of it, said, would you come to the UFO Congress if I interviewed you on stage? And Jacques said, you know what? That's something I would like to do.
Oh, my God. You know what? If I was not planning on being there in Phoenix this February, I would be there because of that alone.
Yeah. Oh,
that
me too. I mean, the Bob Lazar thing was great. It was a lot of fun. People were floored. They had a great time. So many people have been telling me it was historic, and it did. There was a feeling of just, awe, and this was like a one-off event. And but for me, this is even bigger. Jacques Vallée. I mean, I'm a huge Hynek fan. J. Allen Hynek, who was an astronomer at Northwestern and consultant for the Air Force on UFOs, and his protege was Jacques Vallée. Both of them being consultants for Close Encounters, Truffaut's character even being based off of Jacques Vallée, the French guy. And so, I mean, and his books, I've always been a huge fan of Vallée's. I was so floored when I got an interview. But now that I'm going to get to meet him, this is going to be a treasured selfie for me.
Well, that's great. Wow. Oh, no,
I'm so excited about it.
I'm excited, too, actually. That's just great.
Yeah, I mean, this is the ufologist,
Yeah.
So this is going to be really cool. But, yeah, he investigated a lot of humanoids. And Jacques, what's great about Jacques, and I think you agree, you just mentioned maybe they come from the future or something like that. Jacques frustrates people because he's never said, that he always says it's not necessarily extraterrestrial. There could be other things. Now, when I interviewed him, he talked a lot about that and how people get frustrated when he talks about that. But I asked, do you, though, believe that some of this could be extraterrestrial? And he said, yeah, he believes that some of it probably is, but that there's probably many, many other things happening that are just beyond our comprehension.
That's right. I totally agree with that. I a lot of times, I've said kind of redundantly that, maybe it's something that nobody's even thought of yet. It very well could be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it most likely is because that's what science typically is. We have ideas about things should be this way or that way. And then once we get there, send the probe or, put it under the microscope, it's completely something we never even could have imagined it could have been.
Right. Now, we probably ought to get on with the news a little bit. And I also have a story after I know you have one more, I think, to go.
Okay.
And after that, I'd like to talk about a story.
Okay, great. I'm excited to hear it.
Okay.
No, this last one's a fun one because this is a Miami witness. This was actually an event that happened in 1997, and the witness just wrote MUFON about it. It happened in December 24th when the witness is 12 years old. She says that on Christmas Eve, she was sitting on top of her mom's car. This was in Miami. I think I said that. Mm-hmm. But she was sitting up there with a friend, and her friend just kind of got shocked and was looking in the sky, and she looked up, and there was like this red light, and she looked at it for a while and finally saw that there was this big craft in the air that this red light was attached to, and then this red light shot down a beam. She says it was only maybe 20, 30 feet long, and it was circular in shape. It was a dull gray colored saucer. She even said that she thinks that her friend, the guy, could have stood up and possibly touched it. But it shined down a beam, she says, and she was paralyzed. And she could look around, but her and the the guy were paralyzed. Once the beam turned off, it slowly started to move away, and they both ran into their homes to call their families out to look. And finally, their families came out and were able to see this red light taking off in the distance.
Yeah, that's something about the paralyzing thing, and that almost like leads into what you hear about a lot of abduction accounts. You know, they just are frozen; they can't move. It could be something like that. You know, I mean, if they, you know, as it's said many times, if they had the technology to do what they do, you know, who knows what else they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, exactly.
And zapping someone with a paralyzing beam should be no problem at all.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's a really interesting account. But just, I don't know, you hear stories like this and you read about them and you just kind of put yourself in their shoes and just imagine the awe and the how incredible it would be to see this. It's kind of similar because of the Travis Walton thing. You know, I've been thinking a lot about when he came back, and he says he was laying on the road when he saw this craft above him, and then it took off, kind of similar to this. It's just, I don't know. It's amazing what kind of experience that would be, and just so many people with these great experiences.
Right. Now it's time for my story.
Yay!
So I had a show recently with Kevin Randall a few weeks ago, and this gentleman was searching the internet and came across the Kevin Randall and listened to the podcast. And then he wrote me, and he said basically that I heard Kevin Randall say that there's no talk about Roswell before 1980, basically. He says, well, I have a different account of that because when he was back in school in the 1960s, I think it was 1965 or so, one of his roommates that was in the service and went off to do some training. And he came back and he basically told the whole Roswell story, seeing images of the crash, images of actually bodies, and the whole thing. And so they were talking about it over some beers. He said none of them were drunk, but they talked about it over some beers back in 1965. And he is looking to get a hold of these people. This guy's name is Frank Barnes. He's freely giving his name. And he's looking to see if he can reach the guy that actually was the first-hand witness to those photographs and in the Air Force training. So
yeah, that is so interesting because Kevin's right, of course, and Kevin should know. And I'd like to make that point too. Is that often people will say, "Oh, it was the crash at Roswell that started the Air Force looking into UFOs or got people into it." That's not true. People after it happened. It pretty much, even ufologists didn't really. There's a couple obscure references here and there, actually, that I've found over the years. But for the most part, people just didn't know about it until really Stanton Friedman, made it popular again after finding Jesse Marcel and doing those interviews, and then him and he didn't get credit, but for his research along with Bill Moore's. And them putting together the book on Roswell. So, yeah, that's what makes the account that you're talking about that much more significant, because you really had to know something to even know about it.
Yeah, that would be great to actually talk to this guy if he ever does uncover the witness. To talk to them both. So I'm going to keep on that, and we'll see what happens with that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would, a lot of people, even debunkers or skeptics say, there was nothing ever said about it, and after it hit the, what was the name of the paper that came out in, which is not a good paper, the grocery store tabloid.
Oh, like the Inquirer?
Yeah, that's right. It came out in the Inquirer back in 1980, the interview.
But the Inquirer was a credible actual newspaper back when.
Oh, and then it was bought by the former CIA guy, and then it went kind of crazy.
In fact,
Is that right?
I mean, one of the big UFO researchers was Bob Pratt, because he was a writer for the National Enquirer, And, when you read his files, which MUFON, I think, has reposted because they inherited those because Bob Pratt was a MUFON guy and they gave him all of his files. But when you read through some of that stuff, Bill Moore, later on, who became a dubious character, was trying to pitch this MJ-12 story to him. And there were others. Richard Doty tried to give him a fake UFO story that he researched and he found was fake. He even flew around to where it happened and discovered it was fake. And all of these things he wouldn't print because he talked about he was a credible journalist. And if he reported the facts. And if he couldn't verify something or if he found out it was a hoax, he would not print it. Not like today where essentially they just kind of make stuff up.
Yeah. They'll print things without even looking into them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And I know Bill Moore, ran away from the UFO field. And he was kind of important in a lot of ways, but you said dubious, and that's pretty well describes, what he turned out to be. And I just wondered if anyone in the UFO field at all ever speaks to him, or will he not talk to anyone? Do you know anything about that?
He won't. The latest, someone I think he talks to occasionally is Greg Bishop. And Greg Bishop wrote a book called Project Beta, which included some interviews with Bill Moore. And that book now is probably 10, 15 years old, but it was about this whole, Richard Doty affair and everything. But, Greg Bishop, he does a show, I think, called Radio Mysterio. But it's a good book, Project Beta, if you could get it. And he was the only one I know who has talked to him in the past. So other than him, I don't know of anyone. I know he and Stanton Friedman had a falling out, and and it was because of some dishonest dealings that Bill Moore was involved with. That Stanton Friedman had to say, "I can't be attached to that."
Now, what was the famous announcement he made? Chris Lambright was sitting right in the audience when he came out, and he basically admitted to the entire, I don't know if it was a MUFON convention or what it was, but he admitted to everybody. What was
he admitted that he had been working with Richard Doty, who was an OSI agent, Office of Special Investigations, with at Kirtland Air Force Base. And he said that he was given secret UFO info, or that he was promised to be given secret UFO info if he updated Doty on what the UFO people were up to. And he says he knows Doty had spread disinformation, but at that meeting he said he did not willingly spread any disinformation. However, later he admitted that he did, and his accounts have changed and fluctuated and gone this way and that way during the different things. But so he's not necessarily that trustworthy. But in that meeting, he was kind of trying to justify what he did, but it fell on deaf ears, and people were screaming at him, and they even had to stop his talk. People were storming out, and they had to stop the talk and remind everybody to be civil before they started up again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it was a dark period for ufology, and it's something that unfortunately ufologists have many people who were involved just tried to forget, and I can understand why. They just decided, well, I'm not dealing with him, and I'm just going to forget he exists. But under further examination, there was a lot of important stuff that can't be forgotten because there were a lot of hoaxes and disinformation that were spread during that period of time. And, of course, it's important to try to ferret out what was real and what wasn't. And that's why I have, a video online, and I've written about this all, as well as Chris Lambert. He and I don't necessarily agree on all of this, but Chris is a great resource because, like you said, he was there. Yeah. And he has some really interesting insight into that whole period of time.
Right. Well, we went a little long today.
Uh-oh.
That's fine. So I want to thank you very much. It was a lot of fun. And
thanks for having me on again. It was great. And come see Jacques Vallée at the UFO Congress.
I'm definitely going to be there. All right, Alejandro. So everyone hang in there for this quick music break. We'll be right back with Cheryl Costa.
Cheryl Costa.
Hello there. Welcome to the show. This is Martin Willis.
Hi.
Hi there. So, Cheryl, we met in Phoenix last year at the UFO Congress, and it was a pleasure meeting you. And I sat in on part of your talk. Someone distracted me. I was taken away. I didn't get to listen to your whole talk. But I hear some background noise.
I just moved away from it.
Okay, good. All right. I'm not a history buff, I shouldn't say that. I'm a fan of history, and you were talking about early UFO sightings. That fascinates me. But before we get into any of that, can you tell the listening audience your background, basically, and what started you down the path of the UFO field and writing about it?
I was always sort of a UFO bystander. I had my first sighting when I was about 12 years old, this back around 65 or so. And we were coming down, the family was out on a Sunday afternoon. We were coming down a country road off the side of a hill, beautiful late August afternoon, blue skies, not a cloud anywhere, and out there in the western sky, this is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, out there in the western sky was a great big silver ball, and it just hung there for 20 minutes. And then when it did depart, it departed with lickety-split.
Wow.
Okay. So I knew it wasn't. We all knew it wasn't a balloon after we had watched it. My mother was very tender about it. Sat down and explained to me something about UFOs. Apparently, she was a little bit read on it, as much as she could be, probably in the 1965 time frame. And that was it. That was my introduction. And as I was going through high school, I found a good book at the library. I'd bring it home and we'd share it, So it was just kind of a bonding thing with my mom.
Ah, wow, that's kind of interesting. You don't hear that too often.
No, you don't.
Now, the live show producer just asked if you could get into the phone a little more. He says the volume's pretty low.
Sure, I can do that. And I also can speak up, probably needs that a little bit.
Yeah, and so you're also a playwright, and
yeah. I've been writing plays since I guess my first formal play that got actually debuted was in 1994, but I've written about 30 since that time. I've had about 3/4 of them produced, some of them internationally, and the thing with playwrights is unless you're some guy like Neil Simon, nobody knows your name.
Yep, that's right. Well, through any field, it takes really, for someone to hit the top of about anything, to become the rock star of that field. It's, it's like salmon going upstream. There's just a few make it.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
The UFO field is about the same way, There's a handful of people who seem to be invited to all the conventions, and there's a whole bunch of other people like myself who are out there doing some serious work, and we don't get invited.
Well, you did speak in Phoenix, and I thought you were great. So I'm surprised that didn't lead to more engagements for you.
It led to a lot of radio interviews.
Ah.
Both radio and podcast type things, that type of thing. I mean, Richard Dolan had me on his show, and a lot of people have had me on. Probably a good 12 or 15 people have had me on in one capacity or another over the past 8 months. Actually, almost 10 months at this point. But it hasn't. Everybody's saying, "Oh, we'll call you up in 2017." You know, so it's kind of strange. There is an effort afoot here in upstate New York. We're trying to get an upstate New York convention going. Now, it may start out small, maybe like a one-day convention kind of thing, but we're trying. And there's a handful of us out there trying to pull it together, and there's folks down from the New York City area who are interested in making it happen. And a bunch of us have been talking and saying maybe we can get together a 4 or 5 speaker one-day event at some point.
Now, hang on to that thought, because I want to say something, but I also want to remind people that anyone can call in if you'd like. That's 603-967-4030, or you can jump in the chat room at podcastufo.com. Real easy sign up. So you you mentioned Richard Dolan. Now, are you actually in Syracuse?
I'm in Syracuse, so Richard is out Rochester way, so he's about 90 minutes from me.
Right. Now, is he proactive actually in trying to get a group going too?
I haven't reached out to Richard yet.
That would be a good. He would be a good household name, more or less. You know.
Well, yeah. There's actually quite a few people here in New York State who have had good contact with either publishing in UFOs, things like this. And there's probably a good half dozen people. Linda Zimmerman down in the Hudson Valley. Mm-hmm. Pete Robbins writes extensively about it. He's just about an hour from me down towards Watkins.
I thought he was in Pennsylvania, so he's not that. He's actually in New York?
Down nearby Seneca Lake.
Okay.
And there's a handful of other people I can't pull off the top of my head right now. There's another new guy by the name of Tom Conway. Mm-hmm. And he is up in the Troy, New York area by Albany. Mm-hmm. And he's been doing similar research to me. And, in fact, we kind of put our heads together, and quite accidentally on Facebook one day, I was showing a chart of the percentage of UFO sightings based at the county level in New York State. It's a very rare kind of presentation. I had to go in and pull county data, both from MUFON, and I had to create it using the National UFO Reporting Database, because they don't track county data. So I had to literally go look up 3,500 sightings and put it in a spreadsheet what county they were in. Took 2 months. And every evening for a couple of hours for 2 months. That's what I did. But what we figured out, I had a pattern of where all the hot spots in New York State were. Mm-hmm. Okay? And there's about 9 major hot spots. And what was interesting was I was showing a couple of the slides on the UFO updates on Facebook, and Tom came back to me and shot me a picture of a map he had on the wall. He had a New York State map on the wall, road map, and he had pins in it. And he'd gone through the same databases and was putting pins in, but he was doing it like he had pink pins for fireballs. On another wall, he had another road map up there, and he was doing triangles, and he was able to show the distribution of different major types of UFOs and their patterns in New York State. And It's quite a lively presentation that he's got. So I'm hoping to get him to do something at whatever kind of a little convention or conference we put together.
Boy, I wish I could be that organized. That sounds really great. Now, I saw one of your articles. You write for the Syracuse News Times, is it?
I write for 2 news services. I write for the Syracuse News Times, been with them 2.5 years. The column's called New York Skies, and it's a weekly blog, and it's one of the hit blogs. It's we rock and roll that newspaper, and we've got international readership. The editors just do cartwheels about the fact that we have international readership from a little weekly in upstate New York. And then I also write for the Slant News Service out of New York City. and the science editor there has me write UFO articles for him as well.
Wow. Now, I noticed in one of your articles was on a triangle, and it was a great article, great sighting. And
which one was it?
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to say that.
Snowmobile?
No, it was about the guy that said he could, if there was a pole on his barn, he could reach it from there or something like that. And it was 12 foot by 12 foot by 12 foot. He said that's the approximate size. It flew real low.
Yeah, it was the one that was like literally floating over his barn. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So triangles always interest me, and it just seems like there's more and more of them. And when you were doing this, or when you were looking at this chart, did you see that there was a like a peak in triangles?
No, not as much as you might think.
Uh-huh.
I didn't do a real serious breakdown on triangles, but maybe a little later in the program I can give you some good numbers here. I only need to pull up a spreadsheet and I can give you some real serious numbers. I just don't have it in front of me right this moment. Actually, I found it orange fireballs.
Uh-huh.
The fireballs and orbs, they seem to be very predominant.
Yep. Isn't that something? We had Terry Ray on. He and a few other people are organizing some type of orange orb in MUFON and some type of research. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but they are going to explore all these orange orbs that people are seeing. And I know some of them can certainly be Chinese lanterns, but there's just too many sightings that do too many unusual things that it just couldn't be explained by the Chinese lanterns.
Well, that's the joke my spouse has with this whole thing. Every time somebody talks about the Chinese lantern that moves 150, 600 miles an hour, that's the difference. I have a lot of people write me and honestly tell me, "Oh, it's just Chinese lanterns." They have absolutely no idea what people are really reporting, and these things are flying in formations. They're flying in formations and darting around like a bunch of fireflies. They're flying in formations where they'll make themselves look like an airplane. One of the best ones I ever saw was it was about 10 of them, and they lined themselves up. And if you just glanced up in the sky, you would have thought it was just a jetliner up there, but it was actually 10 of them, like in a cross T kind of formation with a couple of them in the back, make it look like the back wings and everything.
Wow!
It was very stealth, but very cute the way they were making it look. It was quite interesting.
So this is actually a sighting that you had.
No. I saw a picture of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, one of the things I remembered you talking about is a 200-year-old UFO account?
Yes.
All right. Can we talk about that?
Sure can. Okay, so over a 14-year window. Okay, 14-year window, we had 378 triangle sightings.
Oh, you're looking at this data right now.
I just pulled up the pivot table.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had, let me give it to you again, 378 triangle sightings. This is out of a grand total of 3,931 sightings over a period, let us say over the last 100 years, okay?
Wow.
And now, please understand, before about 1960, there's not a whole heck of a lot in the database, but from there on up to about the late 80s, early 90s, we start seeing a lot of sightings in the database, only because people either remembered it and put it in the modern database, or it was stuff that was carried over from back from the time before the internet, when people faxed these things in, did it on voicemail recordings and things like that. That's how people used to report these things.
Yeah.
After we got into the mid 90s, people started using things like BBSs, bulletin board services. And then towards the late 90s, we got onto the internet, and from about 99 on, we start seeing some serious, solid reporting of UFO sightings. That's important to keep in mind. Now, I was going to tell you the other big one here. Circular-shaped UFOs, we're going to call them like the just circular shape. Some of these saw a circular shape. That's in the 400 range. Diamond shapes are almost non-existent. People seeing the flying disc, the classic flying saucer, 288 of them. Fireballs, on the other hand, about 311. So
wow.
This is probably over the last 20 years is the strength of this database.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the fireballs, do you mean as in a meteor? No.
Just they are typically depicted like a glowing ball,
okay.
And they have a kind of a fiery quality to it. I saw one actually last summer. I had gone to a conference down in Philadelphia. And we were coming back up I-81 just north of Scranton, and it looked almost like a bumblebee in the distance coming down the valley. It was kind of darting back and forth, and it was still daylight. It was maybe about a half an hour before sunset. And the guy driving the car said, "Is that an orb?" And I looked down the road and I saw this thing. It was probably at about 1,000, maybe 2,000 feet off the ground. And as we literally drove under it, I looked up at it. Imagine a circular ball of iridescence that has kind of a, I'm going to say, like if you saw in the movies, sometimes things have kind of an iridescence, and then there's kind of like maybe a steamy quality around it, kind of makes it almost look like it's maybe on fire or steaming or something. Mm-hmm. It had that quality to it, and it was bright orange.
Wow. Yeah, daylight sightings are really interesting. And one of the things I was thinking of when you were talking about all these different ways of reporting is, can you imagine what the small percentage of people that actually go through all the trouble of reporting? It's probably very low.
Stanton Friedman, when we were at the International UFO Conference down in Phoenix back in February, at one point he was on a panel, and they raised that point. They said, what is the rate of people who actually do pick up and or go onto the computer or make a formal report? And they figure it's like 1 in 10.
I wouldn't doubt it, because the point of my show comes up quite a bit when I'm talking to someone. When I feel comfortable enough, I'll say, well, I do kind of, sort of an esoteric show on UFOs. I'll admit it. And it's kind of funny because I've had so many people talk about their sightings that are just, people you would never imagine. And the question always comes up, did you report it? And they say no. I would say that of all the people that I've talked to, I don't think there's one person that said they reported it. And that's got to be 20 or 30 different people in general conversation.
I put up a chart a couple of weeks ago, and I put it up on Facebook, where I listed the top 10 states for UFO sightings. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the top 10, and when I put it up, and I did it in a little bar chart so you could see, who really were the heavy hitters for it. Now, this was strictly based on National UFO Reporting Center data, because it's easily downloadable, and you can put it into a spreadsheet or into a database and crunch it very nicely. It's a little harder to get MUFON's data. But what I have found when I have gone out and actually got MUFON data, say for a same period of time, I find that it's less than about 3% duplication in sightings, probably actually down more around 1 to 2% duplication in sighting. When you combine both databases, the number's about double. So if I've got a place where there's 100 sightings on, say, National UFO Reporting Center, if I throw the MUFON numbers in there, maybe there's another 70 for that same period of time. So the number's almost double. So if I tell you that New York State had 4,675 sightings over a 14-year window, it was because, but that was National UFO Reporting Center data. They probably had closer to 8,000 sightings with combined data from both databases.
Right.
And then you throw that other thing on top: 1 in 10 report a UFO sighting.
You do the math; it gets pretty scary.
It does get scary. I told one of the things I told one of the editors at the newspaper one day. He said, "Well, how many sightings do we really have in New York State?" I said, 5% of the world's sightings, and he about fell off his chair. And
wow.
And when he wrote an editorial last year, in fact, it was the last one he did with the paper, and just before he retired. And in fact, it was the last one of last year. And he quite literally said, the most popular column we've got here at the paper is not in print. It's on the Internet. And it's about UFOs. And, oh, by the way, before you say, why is there a UFO column in the Syracuse New Times, he says, because there's a lot of sightings in New York State. And then he started quoting some of my numbers, And it got a rather interesting response from the reading public, so to speak. A lot of people are going, why isn't somebody talking about this? And that was one of my arguments and how I got into writing a column, because nobody was reporting this stuff. And I've had people write me and say, well, how come you're reporting a 14-year-old sighting? Because nobody wrote about it.
No, the subject is very popular. It really is. And have you ever looked into, I want to say, is it the Hudson, what was that? The Lower Hudson sightings or whatever, the one that kept happening?
You mean the one that kept happening down around the Indian Point nuclear reactor?
I'm going to say...
Black triangles?
There was some type of sighting that was seen. This is going way back, though. I'm talking, 20-some-odd years. It was like a parkway in New York that people kept seeing.
The Titanic Parkway. Well, that particular location in New York is one of the hot... It's in Westchester County, and Westchester County is a hot spot. In fact, if you give me 20 seconds, I'll pull up one of my slides and I'll tell you exactly how many sightings they've got. And actually, what I can actually do for you is I can actually tell you where the hot spots are in New York, because that's something not many people know, because I haven't published this data yet.
Wow. Yeah, hotspots are...
Your audience is going to get the first crack at this.
Oh, good. Hotspots are always intriguing to me, and it just makes me wonder why. Why they are hotspots.
Well, when I did a chart, I broke my study down. This study has not been presented yet, okay? When I broke it, I went and did in fact, this came out of the the International UFO Congress meeting that we all went to there in February of this year. Mm-hmm. There was a professor there from a California university, and after he saw my presentation, he said, well, I'm doing some studying down in the Hudson Valley of some caves that are not natural. They were made by somebody, and they're estimated to be close to 12,000 years old.
Wow.
And they have gone out and surveyed these things with GPSs, and they can quite literally tell you the zip code of every one of these caves. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I could give him a map of the hot spots of New York State. And I said, it doesn't exist, but I'll make it for you. So the next 4 months, I worked on, breaking all that data down to the county level, and he's the only person I've shared the entire list of what the county sighting counts are. But that's how this study came to be. And what was funny about it was everybody was saying to me, well, how come that hot spot's there? Is there a nuclear reactor or is there military base or something like this? And those questions started really, really coming in. Everybody tried to take a shot at what was there. And I took first thing, I took all the counties and broke them down by the 10 economic regions of upstate New York, of New York State. Okay, typically about 5 to 8 counties per economic region. There's 62 counties. And within each economic region, there was one state that hovered above them all. And so if 5 counties of the 6 in a particular economic region had sightings over 14 years that averaged no more than 15 or 20 over the 14 years. There was one county in there would have 200.
Wow.
Okay, or 150 or 500 or something like that.
Yeah, that pretty much spells it out.
Right, so there was this spike. So I went in my editor one day and I laid all 10 slides out and let him look at them. And he started asking all the same questions. Well, is there a nuclear reactor there? Is there pollution there? Or is it just a population center? What is it? And he told me, check everything. I spent the next 3 months, we checked ley lines, we checked geological faults, we checked natural resources and minerals. There's only 4 nuclear reactors in New York State. And 2 of them are right about 40 miles north of me, and 2 of them are down on the Hudson Valley. That's it.
Yeah, it was the Hudson River Valley UFO sightings what I was thinking of.
Well, the thing is, they're a hot spot down there. There's a place down there called, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, it's called Pine Bush.
Oh, yeah.
Down there. They claim to be the UFO capital of New York.
Right.
They're not. 9 other counties in New York State have more sightings than they do.
No, but didn't they at one time, wasn't something going on at one time that it was even people were lining up? Someone that helps out with the show on our Facebook was telling me a story about actually parking her car and waiting, people all out on their lawn chairs waiting. I'm pretty sure that was Pine Bush.
It might have been. In fact, the thing is, one of the points with Pine Bush, and this is where I went 9 rounds with them about this, because they got very upset when I published an article that said that they weren't this capital, okay? All right, there's a point. Did they report it in the database? Yes, there were reports, but I told the one guy, I said, he says 5,000 people saw it. I said, yeah, but if it was one sighting and 5,000 people saw it, it was just one sighting. Mm-hmm. Okay, just because 5,000 people saw it doesn't give you 5,000 counts,
Right.
So that was where the issue is. Yeah, they had. Boy, I'll tell you, those guys down there in the Hudson Valley have had some extremely visible sightings over the years. Some amazing things. There was a couple down by the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. And I can't put my fingers on those right now, but there was a couple amazing ones down there. But, again, trying to find good write-ups about it and everything. So it's difficult. Now, what part of New York State, I've got that chart up, I can tell you where all the hot spots are.
Oh, good. Okay.
Go ahead. Lead the way. Where do you want to go?
Well, no, see, I don't have a map of New York up in front of me, so.
Well, let me take it this way. If you go out to the western part of New York State, Niagara Falls, that area, mm-hmm. Erie County, New York State, is essentially Buffalo, New York, okay? And if all the other sightings in the state were averaging around 50 over a 14-year period, or in that general area, they had 305.
Wow.
And it's sometimes referred to as the Erie Lake effect, that they have a lot of sightings up around Erie Lake.
So what about New York City? You think of the population?
No, don't go down there yet. Stay in upstate New York for a minute.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to New York, but let me give you one of the mysteries here. New York City's easy because they got a big population.
Right.
But amazingly stuff, everybody says New York City is tops, and they are and they aren't. Okay, if you work the numbers back against the size of the population, mm-hmm. there are other counties in New York State by population that have had more sightings than they do per person.
Okay.
Okay, now let's go to Rochester, New York, up there, right there on Lake Ontario. Mm-hmm. A similar phenomena that we saw with Erie County. They have like this 282 sightings over 14 years, and all the other 8 counties in that district average maybe about 20 over the 20 for the 14-year period. I've had several New York State ufologists look at that chart and say, "My God, maybe there's a Lake Ontario effect that we never knew about." Mm-hmm. And so that's something to be considered. But you want to know about New York City. Okay.
Well, no, I don't have to jump. I don't have to jump there because I remember there was sightings out in Long Island too. So
Long Island. Well, actually, Long Island is the heavy hitter.
It is.
Yeah. Let me give you the Hudson Valley and Capital District. New York State's capital is Albany, New York, way up on the Hudson, about middle of the state. Okay. They've got a huge number for 14 years of 173, and the rest of the counties are down there at about 30 per county. If you go down the Hudson Valley, Westchester County, where a lot of the UFO sightings were, not Westchester County. If you're getting down there where Whitley Strieber had, communion and all that kind of thing, you're down in that general area, Westchester County. They had something in the ballpark of 211 for the 14-year period, which is a lot. Orange County, where Pine Bush is, logged 158.
So
okay.
I finally pulled up a county map, and
right.
And I'd like to go over that with you. We are, I don't believe I mentioned this to you, but we're at the top of the hour, and we take a quick music break. Okay, everyone, that's it for the free part of our show. You can support our show for as little as $1 a month, and that'll be changing actually in January 1st to $2 a month. But you can listen to the first part of the show. If you get in at the $1, it'll stay grandfathered at that forever and ever. And all you have to do is go to podcastufo.com and look under Support the Show. All that information, there's a menu with all different types of information there. It's real easy to do, a one-time sign-up, and then you can listen to the whole show and the archives. I want to thank some people for helping out with the show today. Our guest first, of course, Cheryl Costa. I want to thank Keith Rowland for the Dark Matter Digital Network, the live show, and Peggy Shunning for managing the Facebook page. Remember to like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news. Next week, we have Michael Lauk coming on. It should be a lot of fun. And so that's it. And this is Martin Willis saying, keep your eyes to the sky, and we'll see you next week.